Call it clickbait, call it bandwagoning, call it contrarianism of the highest order, but there's simply no way that I could stay silent on the cinematic behemoth that is Avengers: Infinity War. Hence this bonus podcast and blog version of this review. Oh Marvel, what could have been? Most of you know that I'm a diehard DC buff. No apologies there. Now, Justice League broke my heart, and I don't see the WB riding the wayward oil tanker that is the DCEU anytime soon, Shazam fun notwithstanding. Hey, it's big with capes. But here's something most of you don't know. It was writer-artist Jim Starlin's eye-opening, heart-wrenching, and mind-altering work on the Infinity Gauntlet series that gave me a new appreciation for Marvel Comics back in the 90s. I was a big fan of his limited series Cosmic Odyssey for DC, and asked the shop owner, this was pre-internet days and they were our comic book Google equivalents, what else I could enjoy of his. He put me onto Gauntlet, and it swept me up in its operatic and complex, philosophical and psychedelic, high stakes and heavy, meaningful storytelling in a way that only the great graphic novels dare to. So I understandably went into Avengers: Infinity War with some expectations. That's my baggage, because overall the Marvel Cinematic Brain Trust has done a pretty good job thus far. Not great, of course. Cookie-cutter villains and interchangeable heroes' journeys have been their bane from the start, but overall we've been gifted as comic fans with consistent realizations of silver and modern-aged four-color superhero awesomeness. Doctor Strange DMT trips and Thor Ragnarok Jack Kirby nods? Come on! Now, I won't be discussing the good stuff in the movie here. It's kind of a given that Avengers: Infinity War was going to be well produced, the action would be tight, the effects eye-popping, the score serviceable, and the blockbuster cast would, well, range from emotionally invested in their performances to paycheck cashing. But, well, none of that matters in the end, although this isn't really the end, but we'll get to that. Because for me, and I suspect for many of you, it all comes down to story, which is why I'm doing this list as a storyteller. So, here we go, kits and cats, buckle up, read and or listen if you dare, spoilers be damned, and feel free to roast me away in the comments if it makes you feel better about your precious piece of Disney-owned narrative merchandise. Are we ready? 10 things that just don't work in Avengers: Infinity War. Number 10. Story arc? What story arc? Exposition, scene and setting, conflict, rising action, climax, denouement. The structure of a good story is a classic exponential curve that starts slow at first, setting the scene, then ramps up faster and faster until it reaches an explosive point of release. Oh yeah. And then, in the aftermath, there needs to be a brief period of resolution, so the characters can all process how they've grown and how they've changed and what they've sacrificed to get there. Avengers: Infinity War? Well, at least it got the whole rising action thing right? 'Cause, man, by starting the flick with a ship full of Asgardians already slain, Thor on the verge of dying, the Hulk getting smacked down by the new big bad before magically getting rainbowed down to Earth by Heimdall, Loki giving up the space gem, then attempting to kill Thanos, Thanos snapping his neck and dropping the lifeless corpse in front of his helpless brother, then stabbing Thor's buddy Heimdall through the heart and finally blowing the ship to dust with a clenched fist and a flash of the power gem. You kind of know what you're in for after that. This film is the definition of thrill ride. And by that I mean a roller coaster already positioned at the top, straight drop down, some quick turns through, here's who we are and why we do what we do, couple of loops, corkscrews, upside down bit, then oh my god, the car just fell off the rails and is hurtling through space, my consciousness is disintegrating and touching every point in time, my life has no meaning, why? End of ride. Seriously, no denouement, no resolution, no real arc for anyone save maybe the villain. Now, remember, this criticism is coming from a dude who gets cliffhangers. I love them and I write them, but they just don't work when you stand atop a multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar soapbox and shout, "This is a complete movie-going experience. It's its own story." Avengers: Infinity War is half a film at best, my friends. Half of a story. Which leads us right into number 9. Number 9, insane stakes, but no stakes at all. Death, destruction, more death, tragic loss at the hands of an unstoppable villain who is more like a force of nature, a universal judge, jury, and executioner. How can we stop the ultimate nihilist? Well, we can wait until Avengers 4 to find out, because clearly Thanos will be stopped and everything will go back to how it was, or at least some semblance of how things were before the events of Avengers Infinity War. How do we know this? Because Disney and Marvel recently released their future slate of films at CinemaCon. That's how. Black Panther 2, but the king turned to dust. Spider-Man sequel, but Peter Parker is no more. Guardians of the Galaxy 3, to quote Monty Python, they have shuffled off and joined the choir invisible. The easiest way to create stakes in a story is to make them life and death. But when you know the deaths won't stick, then the stakes, those tensions at the heart of the film's conflicts, they just vanish. Just like all those heroes did at the end of the movie. So rest in peace, half of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We think we'll see you again after Easter 2019. No coincidence on that date, mind you, but bring your rosaries and chocolate bunnies, just in case. Number 8, everything but the kitchen sink and emotion. This is a short gripe, and one that a lot of you might disagree with because it's really a subjective stance, but I did not feel anything at the end of the movie. Not a smile, not a tear, not a quiver. Now, much of this has to do with the aforementioned stakes thing, but I think the bigger problem is that the film is just plain overstuffed. With characters, with subplots, with MacGuffins, with effects and action sequences, and yes, it's the biggest crossover ever, so what do you expect? Except, I'd kinda like to be moved by it, wouldn't you? Now, that's the price of jamming so much shit into 2.5 hours. This is not a slow-boil arc of Breaking Bad, or the puzzle box first season of Westworld, or the 18-hour mindfuck that was Twin Peaks: The Return, or a Tolkien-paced fantasy epic like Game of Thrones. Chronological and mental real estate are limited by design in movies. It's just too bad that the first things to get cut in blockbusters like Avengers Infinity War are the quiet moments, the reflective ones, those ones that end up making the stuff that's supposed to matter, like all those deaths, actually matter. I'm sorry, but I didn't believe Thor's grief when Heimdall and Loki died, because events were too fast and too bombastic, and he could quip about them so soon afterwards. I didn't buy into Wanda and Vision's timeless romance because neither character had been developed enough for us to care by this point. And the Thanos and Gamora connection? Really? What could possibly be invested into it in a series of quick asides and flashbacks for there to be any real complexity or heft between them? So that big sacrifice, which, oh yeah, we're gonna get to, did not hit me. And this goes double for Stark's reaction to his comrades turning to dust after the reality-changing finger stab at the end of Act 3. That was some paycheck cashing of the highest order, and considering the script and how it was all cut together, I can't exactly blame him for it. Number 7. Hawk what? Ant when? Captain who? And speaking of cuts, if you've been following the marketing build-up to Avengers Infinity War, then I'm sure you're aware of the where's Hawkeye controversy. He ain't on the posters, his fellow cast is not talking, his directors say, now be patient, and this original Avenger ends up barely getting a name check in the flick. 0 screen time, not even a flashback. Now, if you're holding back some epic scene in Avengers 4 that rips off DC Comics' whole Green Arrow and Atom takedown of Darkseid, who Marvel ripped off to create Thanos in the first place, and that was from Grant Morrison's Justice League run, yes, I am hardcore. Even if you're going that big with things, shouldn't you at least do the character and his arc the service of planting seeds before the sequel? That's what pisses me off, especially from a storytelling standpoint. And don't even get me started on Ant-Man. Not only is he missing in Avengers 3 as well, giving more weight to the whole Hawkeye team-up in Avengers 4, as I just teased, but he has a sequel coming out before the next Avengers that takes place before the events of this film. Confused yet? Then I might as well hold your head in the toilet and flush one more time for the heroine who shall remain unnamed until the end of this list, but who apparently is the great Marvel Messiah who will save us all in the sequel with her insane power level, she's OP gangster, and random 90s origin story that we never heard about before, but are slated to in 2019, just before Avengers 4. Right. Which, as it should, brings us to number 6, the unseen MacGuffin cost. No messing around here, right, Marvel? Let's get straight to it. The Nova Corps are decimated and Thanos already has the power gem. The Asgardian ship is in ruin, his passenger's dead, and the space gem is just a formality. The Collector is already dead, and Thanos pulls a convenient familial mindfucking with the reality gem. Nebula was caught and tortured off-screen for out-of-nowhere clues to the location of the soul gem. Ooh, Jesus! All that stuff off-screen, all that stuff just suddenly appearing. Oh, I hate it! Especially the last one. Because, number 5, Red Skulls and Soulless Stones. We don't know what the Soul Gem does, but it's supposed to be the most mysterious and important of the 6 universal singularities needed for Thanos' insane master plan. The theories were across the goddamn board. Captain Marvel has it, and she'll make a surprise appearance at the end. It's under Wakanda, in the vibranium meteor that powers their nation. It's inside Heimdall, hence his powers and spooky cool eye color. It's Adam Warlock himself awaiting rebirth at the end of Guardians Volume 2. Nope. Nope. It was on some random planet, and Gamora always knew where, and she shared knowledge of its existence but not location with her sister, and she lied to Daddy about it, and the only way to acquire it is to sacrifice the thing you love most, which means, well, we're gonna be okay, because Thanos is supposed to only love death, right? That's the core agency of his character, right? But no. In Avengers Infinity War, Thanos loves his adopted daughter the most, Gamora. Mostly off-screen, of course, couple of flashbacks, so he tosses her from a frozen mountaintop and wins his prize after a few tears drip down his purple testicle chin. Oh yeah, and it all happens because the red motherfucking skull tells him to. Because somehow, after fiddling with the Tesseract back in Captain America, he became obsessed with tracking down the other gems for himself, and now he's trapped with this task until the end of time. And it's not even the Hugo Weaving version. Awesome. Number 4, a CG boss fight quagmire. And speaking of Hugo Weaving, see, I really do plan these things out, kids. Ever since the god-awful Matrix sequel tried to shove the burly brawl down our collective craw as a valid cinematic advancement, you remember that, the 60 or so Agent Smiths piling on a badly rendered Neo in a mid-res urban playground? Exactly. I have cringed far too much over CG characters with no weight, no personality, and no damn place being the primary hero or villain in a sci-fi or fantasy world. Yes, Gollum is the exception, and characters like Groot and Rocket are fine in doses. But do we really need to do a tally of the CG cast here in Avengers Infinity War? Thanos, the Black Order, the Demon Dog Army at Wakanda, it goes on, it just feels lifeless. It's almost criminal. But, believe it or not, there are indeed worse ways to use effects to change an actor. Laughably worse. Number 3. Dinking the Dinklage. When a supersized Tyrion Lannister appeared on screen as the Forge Master destined to build Thor his new God-killer axe hammer thingy, I don't think the filmmakers got the response they were hoping for. Not in my screening, at least. They laughed. They laughed at the bad wig, at the clumsy Asgardian accent, at the pitch-shifting voice effects. But mostly, it feels like they laughed at the implied joke of having a real-life dwarf, a talented and charismatic one, of course, but a guy burned into their collective brains from countless thrilling schemes as a dwarf in his adventures in far-off Westeros. They laughed at seeing him portrayed not as Pip the Troll from the original Infinity Gauntlet story, or voicing one of the Black Order, or even as MODOK, for Christ's sake. They laughed at him as a giant. It was uncomfortable laughter. Squirmy laughter. Wink and nod and cringe kind of laughter. And he looked lost in the scene. Kind of deflated and distant and maybe even a little sad. Fuck, I just hope he got paid well. Number 2, post-credits anti-climax. Now, someone else who keeps getting paid well in all these Marvel flicks, again, see what I did there, this guy has been there from the start. From the first post-credit scene way back in Iron Man 1. Sam Jackson, Nick Fury, the original one-eyed badass. I can't say it wasn't good to see him at the end of Avengers Infinity War. I get it. It's a nice little full circle, snake eating its tail kind of thing. And it almost felt poetic to watch him turn to smoke and ash before he could finish a trademark curse word. It was cute. But unless you're a hardcore comics fan, then the 90s pager thingy that he drops before disappearing, the one that brings up the Gold Star logo tease to finish things off, well, that just leaves folks scratching their collective heads. Yeah, your next big cosmic flick is Captain Marvel. It comes out right before Avengers 4, and the character will most likely play a key role in Thanos' downfall. Great. But why not take the opportunity to tease the faithful with even the briefest glimpse of what's to come in this story, what they just watched? You've shot the damn thing already. You've shot Avengers 4. It's in the can. You're on record as saying you have an assembly edit together, that it'll likely clock in around 3 hours plus and include every character in the MCU. This was the move to make, boys. A cinematic splash page to end all splash pages. And you blew it. And the number one thing that just didn't work about Avengers Infinity War, not enough freaking cosmic. It all comes back to this for me, and to the kinds of stories that the creator of Thanos and the Infinity Gauntlet and Gems wanted to tell with these characters. Cosmic level events. Tales of gods and devils and eternal beings locked in an impossible game of life and death on a scale few of us can fully comprehend, which is half the fun. Which is what made Starlin's stories so compelling in the first place. They weren't Earth-centric, and yet every star and bit player and caped cameo felt essential. When the Mad Titan's existence-snuffing finger snap happened, you felt it ripple across all of reality. And when the Celestials and Eternals and personifications of reality itself showed up for the fight, it blew our goddamn minds. And sure, the original story is more geared towards an 8-hour limited series on HBO than a pair of blockbuster flicks, but there were ways to make the essentials work. Compromises that could have paid off so well within the bounds of the MCU we know and love. Think about it. Subbing in low-key for Mephisto from the original story, whispering sycophancy and poison in Thanos' ear, saving his inevitable betrayal and demise for the final act to give it some real weight. The return of Goddess Hela in place of Lady Death, spurning the Mad Titan's desperate advances because he wants to die more than anything, right? Yet she needs his sacrificial tribute to return to full power. This is a deliciously toxic relationship on any screen. Shelving the whole Black Order and CG Demon Armies thing, all that bullshit, and still having the heroes fall, even with their overwhelming numbers advantage, because Thanos is just that badass. We get to watch him carve his way through body after body by himself, slack-jawed at his power, at the strength of his resolve. And then having time with the survivors to really feel the loss of their comrades, to see them tortured with grief and guilt and regret, to see the consequences of their actions. And then, finally, the big guns, the gods of the MCU, at last enter the fray. That is how you do a cliffhanger, son. So like I said at the top, Marvel, just imagine what could have been.